Hey everybody, Edo here, and this is Dawn of Ulos by Thunderworks Games. And if you're not aware, I am a huge fan of Thunderworks Games. I'm actually a good friend of Keith Mateka, the owner of it. We've worked on games together like Skull Hollow. I, in fact, was in Wisconsin, and he taught me himself how to play, right? So this is a closer relationship, but I very much dig this game, and I wanted to talk about it. And in fact, I had it. I backed it on Kickstarter, and this is the base edition, but there's some like amazing coins somewhere in here and other things that were part of it. But I got it. And I opened it up and I looked in the box and then I like sort of bounced off. I was like, not now. And I closed it up and went about my day. And then we were at a game night at, in his sort of office, warehousey place. And, I was like, can we play on Ulos? And again, I really dug it. I've actually heard and seen a lot of the reviews of this in the past, so I had some familiarity, but like one thing that comes up is that people talk about it as like sort of a stock market-y game or like an economic type game, and like for me it didn't resonate that way at all. Like I can see where it's coming from, but this just to me felt like Populous or Black and White. Those are video games, but this sort of like you're playing as one of a number of gods and you're overlooking the world as it's being created, and there factions that are coming into the planes, into the world, and you're sort of manipulating the world and getting them to fight and creating interactions, and in that way gaining power and favor. And I dig it. It's super cool. So at the start of the game, each player is going to get a god card. They're all the same, even though they have different art and fiction and all that stuff, but there's no player powers. It's just like a how to play. And really very simple. Oh, and as you can see, there are these different factions, dwarf, goblin, what is this guy? The Frogkin, rat folk, whole bunch. There are 10. Yeah, 10, right? Yeah. But you're going to start with 5. So they all have different abilities, and there's a pretty big variation as you play. And also, this board is created by these sort of shards or land masses, and this is actually half. So this is like 3 pieces. They're underneath, and you'd have it out, and there'd be the 2 by 3 sort of set of them for ease of space and getting this all on camera. I did it this way. But so what you're going to be doing on your turn is there's just really 2 phases. One phase is like place a tile. You can have some tiles in your hand, and they look like terrains. I'll show that in a second. And then you're going to have a buy a card or use a card piece, right? And so when you're placing a tile, you're placing it on the board, you're matching the terrain on the ground, but when you're initially bringing units into the first turn, you have to essentially summon a faction from what's called the lost into the living or into the world. And so you're trying to create the shape of one of these tile pieces. And when you're bringing it in, it just has to match the shape. It covers the land. It doesn't need to be exact to the terrain, but the terrain will become more important as we go. And say somebody else goes out here and they bring in the rat folk. And again, you get to choose. You'd only have 5 to choose from. And when you do, you have their banners here, and you'd bring their banners in. So we've got rats, goblins, maybe there were some more for some more players. And now they're in the world. And then so once they're in the world, when you put out more tokens, you're going to be expanding the land around them, but in particular following the terrain mapping. So like you can see here, these are forest over here, or mountain, that's mountain plains, maybe that's over here, and you're building it out. Now, each faction has an affinity. Goblins are like desert and forest. Rat folk are desert and plains. You can also see it on the actual models as well. I think it'd be really neat to paint these, though I don't paint minis very well, but this, I think it would help them pop. But so that's what they're looking for. And when they get connected to those territory, they get stronger. And so in this case, the goblins are like forest. There's now 2 forests connected. And so the goblins would get 2 stronger. So it's not total area, it's total of the affinity area. So they're going to be going up in strength, and as they are, their tiles are going to move here on this board. And this is where the stock comparison comes in. But this is effectively, their territory relates to their strength and how much they're effectively worth in spoils. And then, so you're going to play a tile. Then you can buy a card or use a card. So, but first you probably want to buy it. You start with some money, you earn money through play as well. And, this is where the goblins are. So they cost their strength. It'd be $4 a card. Say I started with 12, I could buy 3 cards. Max 3 per turn, but they don't have to be from the same faction. They just have to be from a faction in play that's not still in Lost. So you get these cards. Cool. Well, if I'm not buying cards and I'm using cards, the cards all have different effects. Well, 2 things. 1, you get a value out of it. So when you use a card from a faction, you're going to get their spoils. So if I give up one of these goblin cards back to the tile, it's worth 4 here, I'd get $4. So you can sort of get them while they're weak, and then they gain up in strength, and then you can get more money when you sell, that kind of thing, right? And then the other thing is they all have an ability. Goblin lets you look at other people's cards and get money for them. Ratfolk lets you like build more land. The Sheki let you move tiles around. The what are these guys called? The Satyr let you get cards from folks that haven't come into play. The Orcs let you block off all different abilities. And I'll create really interesting dynamics of play, and how they mix and match together creates a lot of different change. But so, what you're doing is you're sort of expanding the land, making things stronger, buying their cards, using their abilities. This sort of tension continues to build as the land builds out. Now, if I'm building out the land, I should be building it out by matching the territory, but I wouldn't always have to, but I'm getting lucky here on my draws. But so they're going out now. They're getting stronger as you do this. But then at some point, you're going to connect 2 factions as a player. And when you do that, this triggers, a fight. And so you place it face down. It's got a match, but you place it face down. And I've, as a player, initiated this. Now remember, I'm not one of these factions. I'm playing as a god. So I've now built up the land masses such that these 2 factions are ready to go at it. But now we're all going to get involved, right? Now there's a little connection. Now everyone wants to know what's going to happen. And so everyone can play cards down in front of them, however many cards they want, whether they could be part of either of these factions or not. If they're not, it's a bluff. They just go back to your hand. But if they are, they're going to be included in the fight resolution. So when they fight, you get their strengths together. So I guess the goblins here right now, 1, 2, 3, 4. Goblins here are 4, and the rats are 1. So without interfering, goblins would just win. But with interfering, people can play cards. If I play goblin cards, the goblins for each card get stronger. But if we play rat cards, and if a bunch of people play rat cards, then they get stronger too. To see who wins. So it's sort of like, how do the gods want to influence it? Gets really interesting with the tension on how many cards are in hand versus how many cards have been played to the table, so that how many cards are available. There's motion between the players. It's really interesting. When it gets resolved, we figure out who wins. If you played cards, you have to give half of them up, so you sell them instantly, and you can keep the other half. But then you connect the lands, and so let's say the goblins lost. The goblins go out of the loss, they're knocked off the board, and the player who initiated is going to get a rift token, and this is like a little special ability you can play later on your turn. So you're building up power, buying cards, using cards, and then these big interaction moments come when factions interact, and they're big swings. Like a really powerful faction, a bunch of people can gang up and knock it back down, or there could be some really interesting play. And then you keep going until you've used up all the tiles, or as the factions move up and down the strength track, or power track, they can become legendary, and when they do, they flip. They're going to be worth 2 bonus points per card at the end of the game. But then also, if at any point you have 2 legendary factions, that's going to trigger game end. And you can be legendary and be really powerful, but then still get weaker if something happens. So what do I like about this? It's weird. It feels different, and in a way it creates this nice separation of manipulation and the things that are going on the board. That moment is pretty light, in that you just sort of resolving a power battle, and it's like a tug of war, and who wins knocks the other person out. But the swinginess and the dynamics between the players really stand out to me, and preparing and working around those fight moments is what's really interesting. I also like all the abilities from I didn't play with every faction, but the different factions I played in different games all created interesting dynamics. and it just felt different and neat and interesting. It plays pretty quick. Again, you like place a tile and then you decide, am I going to buy a card, or am I going to, and which I pay for, or I'm going to, use a card, which is I get the spoils, or and use the ability. And I dig it. I keep all of Thunderworks games, but I like having this one because I feel like for a lot of different game groups, it would feel different. And again, for me, this whole thing, like people are like, it's definitely not area control. Like you see the hexes, but that economic vibe to me didn't throw me off. I felt like with the powers and the play in this game, you're just trying to manipulate the world. I feel like there's lots of opportunities to like add more to that dynamic, and I think it's like it's very interesting and just cool. And the art and everything was also super cool. These card backs are amazing. So anyway, this is Dawn of Ulos. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.